And when the good emperors fall, and the merry men rejoice, such is the day the sky will be filled with auroras bright as a night. It is the year 102. The sky city of Failimour was booming. Steam-powered ships ruled the skies, though a new power source steam had allowed us to reach the clouds. But with innovation came greed, and with greed came evil. It is the year 103, the southmost part of Aurora, the deep fell swamps. In it, ugly creatures known as ogres ruled the bogs. By word of mouth, the success of Failimour and steam power had spread. From the reaches of the Beragian valleys to the Alarinth Ice Islands, everyone wanted steam power and would stop at nothing to obtain it. But the ogres could not create innovation on their own. They joined forces with a festering heart known as the Mist. The Mist sent out assassins throughout Aurora. Their dark journey was to take over the source of steam known as Istriel's Heart. Though no man has laid eyes on it, if one unlocks Istriel's Heart, they will be given a choice. To keep the power, letting the corruption of steam take its hold on Aurora, or destroy it, but leaving no evil left in the world. Forever.
But that is not where my story takes me. Year 161, journal entry. The sky. The last place for us to be set free. For I've always dreamed of what is above. And tonight, I will be of the few that see it. My name is Benafour.
The way Benafour Stormgate saw it, he spent more time crashing than he did flying. If there were a rewards card for frequent crashers, he'd be like double platinum level. He regained consciousness as he was free-falling through the clouds. He had no idea how long he'd been gaining altitude, but at some point he must have passed out from the cold and the lack of oxygen. Benafour peered to his left, seeing his beautiful golden airship with white sails now on fire, plummeting towards the sea with him in the distance. The ship grunted and exploded, leaking some more golden metal off into the air. The shockwave from the explosion echoed to him, knocking him sideways. Benafour spun around in circles, his vision becoming a blur of blue and white and orange. This was his biggest crash yet. The clouds parted around him. He saw the glittering sea far, far below. No sign of any coastline, familiar or otherwise, except for one tiny island at the horizon. Benafour couldn't fly. He had a couple of minutes, at most, before he'd hit the water and go kersplat. He decided he didn't like that ending to the epic ballad of Benafour. He was still clutching the Archimedes spear, which didn't surprise him. His father had given it to him before he left on his journey to the deep fell swamps. Unconscious or not, he would never let go of his most valuable possession. With a little maneuver, he managed to pull some duct tape from his tool belt and strap the spear to his chest. That made him look like a low-budget airship engine, but at least he had hands free. He started to work furiously, tinkering with the spear, pulling out anything he thought would help from his tool belt. A drop cloth, metal extenders, some string and grow mats. Working while falling was impossible. The wind roared in his ears. It kept ripping his tools, screws, and canvas out of his hands, and he finally constructed a makeshift frame. He popped open a hatch on the spear, teased out 2 wires, and connected them to his crossbar. How long until he hit the water? Maybe a minute. He turned the sphere's control dial and it wired into action. More bronze wires shot from the orb intuitively, sensing what Benafour needed. Cords laced up the canvas drop cloth. The frame began to expand on its own. Benafour pulled out a can of kerosene and a rubber tube and lashed him to the thirsty new engine that the orb was helping him assemble. Finally, he made himself a rope hattler and shifted to that the X-frame was attached to his back. The sea got closer and closer, a glittering expanse of slap-you-in-the-face death. He yelled in defiance and punched the spear's override switch. The engine coughed to life. The makeshift rotor turned. The canvas blade spun, but much too slowly. Benafour's head was pointed straight down at the sea, maybe 30 seconds to impact. At least nobody is around to see it, he thought bitterly, or he'd be a joke forever. What was the last thing to go through Benafour's mind? The ocean. Suddenly, the orb got warm against his chest. The blades turned faster, the engine coughed, and Benafour tilted sideways, slicing through the air. He gazed down to the water to see the airship smash into the liquid, making a ring of white water spray shoot up above. The flames died fast, and the ship bubbled under the surface. His heart dropped to sadness, seeing his airship sink to the depths of the frozen waters of Futh. He had had that airship for 4 years of his life, and it was sad to see it sink beneath the deep. The engine coughed again, and Benafour shot downwards. Yes! He yelled. He had successfully created the world's most dangerous personal mini-airship. He shot toward the island in the distance, but he was still falling much too fast. The blades shuddered, the canvas screamed. The beach was only a few hundred yards away when the spear turned lava hot, and the mini-contraption exploded, shooting flames in every direction. If he hadn't been immune to fire after all the years working in forgeries, creating metal to swords and shields, constantly holding hot coals, Benafour would have been charcoal. As it was, the mid-airship explosion probably saved his life. The blast flung Benafour sideways while the bulk of his flaming contraption smashed into the shore at the full speed with a massive kaboom! His ears were ringing, his vision bright white, but it soon faded to clear. Benafour opened his eyes, amazed to be alive. He was sitting in a bathtub-sized crater in the sand. A few yards away, a column of thick black smoke roiled into the sky from a much larger crater. The surrounding beach was peppered with smaller pieces of burning wreckage. He gazed out to the ocean to see his sinking airship bubbling below the waves. "My spear," Benafour said to himself, patting his chest. The spear wasn't there. His duct tape and rope hattler had disintegrated. His heart dropped. He struggled to his feet. None of his bones seemed to be broken, which was good, but mostly he was worried about the Archimedes spear. If he destroyed his priceless artifact to make a flaming 30-second airship jetpack, he was going to lose his shit. He staggered across the beach, wondering why he didn't see any ships sailing or more airships in the air. Well, the airship he bought from Failimour City is going to be sending him a very big paycheck. The island seemed perfect for a vacation trip, with blue waters and soft white sand, which reminded him of the Caribbean. Maybe it was uncharted. Did they even have uncharted islands in this world? Maybe the blast from his airship sent him sailing into another reality. The larger crater was about 8 feet deep. At the bottom, the blades were still trying to turn. The engine belched smoke. The rotor croaked like a stepped-on frog, but damn, pretty impressive for a rush job. The mini-airship jetpack had apparently crashed onto something. The crater was littered with broken wooden furniture, shattered china plates, some half-melted pewter goblets, and some burning linen napkins. Benafour wasn't sure where all that fancy stuff had been on the beach, but at least it meant that this place was inhabited after all. Finally, he spotted the Archimedes spear, steaming and charred but still intact, making unhappy clicking noises in the center of the wreckage. "Spear!" he yelled. "Come to Papa!" He skidded to the bottom of the crater and snatched up the spear. He collapsed, sat cross-legged, and cradled the device in his hands. The bronze surface was searing hot, but Benafour didn't care. It was still in one piece, which meant he could still use it. Now, if he could just figure out where he was and how to get out of here. He was making his mental list of tools he might need when a girl's voice interrupted him. "What are you doing? You blew up my dining table!" Immediately, Benafour thought, uh-oh. Benafour has met many beautiful women in his 20 years of life, but the girl glaring down at him from the edge of the crater actually looked beautiful. She wore a sleeveless white Greek-style dress and a golden braided belt. Her hair was long, straight, and golden brown, almost the same as cinnamon on toast color. The girl's face was milky pale, with dark almond-shaped eyes and pouty lips. She looked maybe 18, close to Benafour's age, and sure, she was pretty, but with that angry expression on her face, she reminded Benafour of every popular girl in every airship academy he had ever attended in his mid-teen years. The ones who made fun of him, gossiped a lot, thought they were so superior, and basically did everything they could to make his life miserable. Benafour disliked her instantly. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said, annoyed. "I just fell out of the sky. I constructed a mini jetpack in midair, exploded into flames halfway down, crash-landed, and barely survived. But by all means, let's talk about your dining table." He snatched up a half-melted goblet. "Who puts a dining table on the beach where innocent airship navigators, like myself, who are trying to adventure to unknown lands for someone to crash into? Who does that?" The girl clenched her fists. Benafour was pretty sure she was going to march down the crater and punch him in the face. His brown hair blew in the wind. His airship goggles hung under his shirt neckline. Instead, she looked up into the sky. "Really?" She screamed at the empty blue. "You want to make me curse even worse? Curse you, father! Have you no shame?" Benafour noticed that she'd just picked her father to blame. He didn't figure that was a good sign. "I doubt he's listening. You know, the whole split personality thing?" "Show yourself!" The girl yelled at the sky, completely ignoring Benafour. "It's not bad enough that I'm exiled. It's not bad enough you took away the few good people I'm allowed to meet. You think it's funny to send me this char-boiled runt of a boy to ruin my tranquility? This is not funny! Take him back!" Hey, Sunshine?" Benafour raised his right hand. "I'm right here, you know." She growled like a cornered animal. "Do not call me Sunshine! Get out of that hole and come with me now so I can get you off my island." Well, since you asked nicely, Benafour didn't know what that crazy girl was so worked up about, but he didn't really care. If she could help him leave this island, that was totally fine by him. He clutched his charred spear and climbed out of the crater. When he reached the top, the girl was already marching down the shoreline. He jogged to catch up. She gestured in disgust at the burning wreckage. "This was a pristine beach. Look at it now." "Yeah, my bad," Benafour muttered. "I should have crashed on one of the other islands. But oh wait, there aren't any!" She snarled and kept walking along the edge of the water. Benafour caught a whiff of cinnamon. Maybe her perfume? Not that he cared. Her hair swayed down her back in a mesmerizing kind of way. Which, of course, he didn't care about that either. He scanned the sea. Just like he'd seen during his fall, there were no land masses or ships all the way to the horizon. Looking inland, he saw great grassy hills dotted with trees. A footpath wound through a grove of cedars. Benafour wondered where it led, probably to the girl's secret lair, where she roasted her enemies so she could eat them at her dining table on the beach. He was so busy thinking about that, he didn't notice that the girl stopped. He ran into her. "Gah!" She turned and grabbed his arms to keep him from falling in the surf. Her hands were strong, as though she worked with them for a living. She glared at him, her dark almond eyes only a few inches from his. Her cinnamon smell reminded him of his mother, who passed away when he was 8. Man, he hadn't thought about that in years. The girl pushed him away. "All right, this is a good spot. Now tell me you want to leave." "What?" Benafour's brain was still kind of muddled from the crash landing. He wasn't sure he had heard her right. "Do you want to leave?" she demanded. "Surely you have somewhere to go." Yeah. I need to get back to Failimour City," Benafour said. "Fine," she snapped. "Just say I want to leave Ogigya." Okay. Benafour wasn't sure why, but her tone kind of hurt. Which was stupid, since he didn't care what this girl thought. "I want to leave, whatever you said." "Ogigya." The girl pronounced it slowly, as if Benafour was 5 years old. "I want to leave Ogigya," he said. She exhaled, clearly relieved. "Good. In a moment, a magical raft will appear. It will take you wherever you want to go." "Who are you?" She looked like she was about to answer, but she stopped herself. "It doesn't matter. You will be gone soon. You're obviously a mistake. That was harsh, Benafour thought. He spent enough time thinking he was a mistake in life in general. He didn't need a random crazy girl reinforcing the idea. He remembered a legend his dad used to tell him about a girl on an island. It didn't matter, as long as he got to leave. Any moment now, the girl stared out at the water. No magical raft appeared. Maybe he got stuck in traffic, Benafour said. This is wrong. She glared at the sky. This is completely wrong! So, plan B, Benafour asked. You got like an internal clock or a portable snow conduction matrix? What in the hell are those? She turned to Benafour. He soon realized this woman probably knew nothing about airship control jargon. Never mind, he said. Ugh! The girl turned and stormed inland. When she got to the footpath, she sprinted into the grove of trees and disappeared. Okay, Benafour said. Or you could just run away. From his tool belt pouch, he pulled some rope and a snap hook, then fastened the Archimedes spear to his belt. He looked out to sea. Still no magic raft. He could stand here and wait, but he was hungry, thirsty, and tired. He was banged up pretty bad from his fall. He didn't want to follow that crazy girl, no matter how good she smelled. On the other hand, he had nowhere else to go. The girl had a dining table, so she probably had food, and she seemed to find Benafour's presence annoying. Annoying her is a plus, he said to himself and followed her into the hills. Holy siege engines! Benafour shouted. The path opened into the nicest garden Benafour had ever seen. Not that he had spent a lot of time in gardens, but damn! On the left was an orchard and a vineyard, peach trees with red golden fruit that smelled awesome in the warm sun, carefully pruned vines bursting with grapes, powers of flowering jasmine, and a bunch of other plants Benafour couldn't name. On the right were neat beds of vegetables and herbs, arranged like spokes around a big sparkling fountain where bronze lion heads spewed water into a central bowl. At the back of the garden, where the footpath ended, a cave opened in the side of a grassy hill. Compared to his airship living quarters, only with a small bunk bed and a cabin and a bathroom, the entrance was tiny, but it was impressive in its own way. On either side, crystalline rock had been carved into glittering Grecian columns. The tops were fitted with a bronze rod that held silky white curtains. Benafour's nose was assaulted by good smells: cedar, juniper, jasmine, peaches, and fresh herbs. The aroma from the cave really caught his attention, like beef stew cooking. He started toward the entrance. Seriously, how could he not? He stopped when he noticed the girl. She was kneeling in her vegetable garden, her back to Benafour. She muttered to herself as she dug furiously with a trowel. Benafour, a little creeped out, approached her from the side so she could see him. He didn't feel like surprising her when she was armed with a sharp gardening implement. She kept cursing in Greek and stabbing at the dirt. She had flecks of soil all over her arms, her face, and her white dress, but she didn't seem to care. Benafour could appreciate that. She looked better with a little mud, less like a beauty queen and more like an actual get-your-hands-dirty kind of person. I think you punished that dirt enough, he offered. She scowled at him, her eyes red and watery. Just go away. You're crying, he said, which was stupidly obvious, but seeing her that way took wind out of his many jetpack blades, so to speak. It was hard to stay mad at someone who was crying. None of your business, she muttered. It's a big island. Just find your own place. Leave me alone. She waved vaguely toward the south. Go that way, maybe. So, no magic raft, Benafour said. No other way off the island? Apparently not! What am I supposed to do then? Sit in the sand dunes until I die? That would be fine. The girl threw down her trowel and cursed at the sky. Except I suppose he can't die here, can he? Zeus! This is not funny! Can't die here? Hold up. Benafour's head spun like a crankshift. He couldn't quite translate what the girl was saying, like when he heard Spaniards or South Americans speaking Spanish. Yeah, he could understand it sort of, but it sounded so different. It was almost another language. I'm gonna need more information here, he said. You don't want me in your face. That's cool. I don't want to be here either. But I'm not gonna go die in a corner. I have to get off this island. There's gotta be a way. Every problem has a fix. She laughed bitterly. You haven't lived very long if you still believe that. The way she said that sent a shiver up his back. She looked the same age as him, but he wondered how old she really was. You said something about a curse, he prompted. She flexed her fingers like she was practicing her throat strangling technique. Yes, I cannot leave Ogigya. My father Zeus fought against the gods, and I supported him. Zeus? Benafour asked, confused. As in, the Greek god Zeus. The girl rolled her eyes. Yes, you impossible little... Whatever she was going to say, she bit back. I was imprisoned here, when I could cause the gods no trouble. About 500 years ago, the gods vowed to forgive their enemies and offer animosity. I was allowed one lover every 5 years. The last man was an airship captain, ironically. I thought he was going to be able to take me off this island. If the man who falls on this island strikes up love with me, I could be allowed to leave forever if he returns for me. And guess what? No man has returned. But the last man lied to me about loving me. He tricked me so he could never leave, so he could leave the island. He lied about loving me for 2 years! 2 fucking years! She cried. Benafour stepped back, confused and in shock. His dad's legend about a Greek goddess trapped on an island. The only way it could be broken is as if she falls in love with the man who appears there. His mind clicked and he remembered. He snapped his fingers. You're that lady! The one who was named after the Caribbean music. Her eyes glinted murderously. Caribbean music? Yeah, reggae? Benafour shook his head. Marinegay? Hold on, I'll get it. He snapped his fingers again. Ah, Calypso! Now I remember. Huh, my dad told me about this legend, but I never believed it to be true. Well, until now. My dad told me about you. That you are a sweet, caring, loving woman and helpful. Not, Benafour trailed clearly, thinking that this girl wasn't as nice as the dad let on. She shot to her feet. Yes? Nothing, Benafour said. Would you be sweet? She demanded. If the gods forgot their promise to let you go. Would you be sweet if they laughed at you by sending another hero, but a hero who looked like you? Is this a trick question? Leave me alone! She shouted and turned and marched into her cave. Hey! Benafour ran after her. When he got inside, he lost his train of thought. The walls were made from multicolored chunks of crystal. White curtains divided the cave into different rooms with comfy pillows and woven rugs and platters of fresh fruit. He spotted a harp in one corner, a loom in another, and a big cooking pot where the stew was bubbling, filling the cavern with luscious smells. The strangest thing? The chores were doing themselves. Towels floated through the air, folding and stacking into neat piles. Spoons washed themselves in a copper sink. The scene reminded Benafour back in the Belfast barley fields of his home, when he used to do chores with his mother around the house. Even though he only knew snippets of his mother, this lone memory seemed to stick with him. Calypso stood at a wash basin, cleaning the dirt off her arms. She scowled at Benafour, but she didn't yell at him to leave. She seemed to be running out of energy for her anger. Benafour cleared his throat. If he was going to get any help from this lady, he needed to be nice. So, I get why you're angry. You probably never want to see another man again, especially an airship guy. Many men come here. First there was a voyager from Croatia, and after him, Odysseus, then a pirate, and many others. The gods send me the greatest heroes, the ones I cannot help. She trailed off. You fall in love with them, Benafour guessed, and then they leave you. Her chin trembled. That is my curse. I had hoped to be free of it by now, but here I am, still stuck on Ogigya after 3,000 years. 3,000? Benafour's mouth felt tingly like he had just eaten pebbles. You look good for 3,000. And now, the worst insult of all. The gods mock me by sending you. Anger bubbled inside Benafour. He was tired of being laughed at, tired of being shooed away, tired of being the butt end of a joke, tired of being the annoying guest. That's why he left on this voyage, to get away from all that. He was the annoying guest she couldn't get rid of. She'd never fall for him, but she was totally out of his league. Not that he cared. She wasn't his type anyway. She was way too annoying and beautiful, and well, it didn't matter. Fine, he said. I'll leave you alone. I'll build something myself and get off this stupid island without your help. She shook her head sadly. You don't understand, do you? The gods are laughing at both of us. What fucking gods, woman? 'Cause I don't see any. He snapped at her, looking around annoyed. Don't you snap at me! Were you the one who's treating me like shit? What am I supposed to do? I want to get the hell out of here. If the raft does not appear, that means they've closed off Ogigya. You're stuck here the same as me. You can never leave. The first few days were the worst. Benafour slept outside on a bed of drop cloths under the stars. It got cold at night, even on the beach in the summer, and so he built a fire with the remains of Calypso's dining table. That cheered him up a little. During the days, he walked the circumference of the island and found nothing of interest, unless you liked beaches and endless sea in every direction. He tried to peer up at the skies to see if there was any routes an airship would pass through. Nothing. No luck. When he slept, he didn't dream. It was as if his imagination had shut off. The worst part of being here? He was losing track of the days. He woke up one morning and couldn't remember if he'd been on Ogigya for 3 nights or 4. Calypso wasn't much help. Benafour confronted her in the garden, but she just shook her head. Time is difficult here. Great. For all Benafour knew, a century had passed. Or maybe he'd only been here for 5 minutes. Either way, he needed to get off this island. Calypso took pity on him in some ways. She sent her invisible servants to leave bowls of stew and goblets of apple cider at the edge of the garden. She even sent him a few new sets of clothes. Simple cloth shirts and pants. They fit him well. Benafour wondered where she had gotten measurements. Maybe she just used her generic pattern for a scrawny male. Anyway, he was glad to have new threads, since his old ones were pretty smelly and burned. Usually Benafour could keep his clothes from burning when he caught fire, but it took concentration with his inventions. Back at home, sometimes he was working in his blacksmith shop. If he wasn't thinking about it, he'd be working on some metal project or on a hot forge, look down and realize his clothes had burned away, except for his tools and underwear. Kind of embarrassing. Despite the gifts, Calypso obviously didn't want to see him. One time he poked his head inside the cave and she freaked out, yelling and throwing pots at his head. Yeah, she was definitely on Team Benafour. He ended up pitching a more permanent camp near the footpath, where the beach met the hills. That way he was close enough to pick up his meals, but Calypso didn't have to see him and go into a pot-throwing rage. He made himself a lean-to with sticks and canvas. He dug a campfire pit. He even managed to build himself a bench and a work table from some driftwood and dead cedar branches. He spent hours fixing his dad's spear, cleaning it and repairing the circuits. He made himself a compass, but the needle would spin all crazy no matter what he tried. This island was designed to be off the charts, impossible to leave. He remembered a time when he was in Ogigya and met a dwarf about an old bronze astrolabe he had picked up. The old dwarf told him Odysseus had made it. He had a sneaking suspicion Odysseus had been thinking about this island when he constructed it, but unfortunately, Benafour had left it on the crashing airship now under the wet waters. Besides, the dwarf told him the astrolabe didn't work. Benafour walked the beaches thinking how on earth he could have been sent here. Maybe the gods or something didn't care about the island anymore and that broke the magic. Or maybe the magic of this place was working just fine. The gods punished Calypso by sending her buff, courageous dudes who left as soon as she fell for them. Maybe that was the problem. Calypso would never fall for him. She wanted him to leave, so they were stuck in a vicious circle. Then one morning, Benafour made a discovery, and things got more complicated. Benafour was walking in the hills, following a little brook that ran between 2 big cedar trees. He liked this area. It was the only place on Ogigya where he couldn't see the sea. so he could pretend he wasn't stuck on an island. In the shade of the trees, he jumped over a creek. Instead of landing on soft earth, his feet hit something much harder. Clang! Metal. Excited, he dug through the mulch until he saw the glint of bronze. Oh my! He laughed like a crazy person as he gathered the scraps. He had no idea why the stuff was here. Benafour found a handful of wires, a few bent gears, a piston that might still work, and several hammered sheets of celestial bronze, the smallest the size of a drink coaster and the largest the size of a war shield. It wasn't a lot, but it was more than sand and rocks. He gathered up his treasure trove and lugged it back to camp. After that, the days passed more quickly, and with a lot more noise. First, Benafour made himself a forge out of mud bricks, each one baked with his in the sun. He found a large rock he could use as an anvil base, and he pulled nails from his tool belt until he had enough to melt into a plate for a hammering surface. Once that was done, he began to recast the celestial bronze scraps. Each day his hammer rang out bronze until his rock anvil broke, or his tongs bent, or he ran out of firewood. Each evening he collapsed, drenched in sweat and covered in soot, but he felt great. At least he was working, trying to solve his problem. The first time Calypso came to check on him, it was to complain about the noise. "Smoke and fire?" she said. "Clanging on metal all day long. You're scaring away the birds!" "Oh no, not the birds!" Benafour grumbled under his breath. "What do you hope to accomplish?" He glanced up and almost smashed his thumb with his hammer. He'd been staring at metal and fire for so long he'd forgotten how beautiful Calypso was. Annoyingly beautiful. She stood there with sunlight in her hair, her white skirt fluttering around her legs, a basket of grapes and fresh-baked bread tucked under one arm. Benafour tried to ignore his rumbling stomach. "I'm hoping to get off this island," he said back. "Isn't that what you want, right?" Calypso scowled. She set the basket near his bedroll. "You haven't eaten in 2 days. Take a break and eat." 2 days? Benafour hadn't even noticed, which surprised him since he liked food. He was even more surprised that Calypso noticed. Thanks," he muttered. I'll try to hammer more quietly." "Huh," she sounded unimpressed. After that, she didn't complain about the noise or the smoke. The next time she visited, Benafour was putting the final touches on his first project. He didn't see her approach until she spoke right behind him. "I brought you." Benafour jumped, dropping the wires. "Bronze balls, girl! Don't sneak up on me like that!" She was wearing red today, Benafour's favorite color. That was irrelevant. She really looked good in red. Also irrelevant. "I wasn't sneaking," she said. "I was bringing you these." She showed him the clothes that were folded over her arms. A new pair of leather pants, a white cotton shirt, and a long blue trench coat. Wait. Those were his clothes. Except they couldn't be. His trench coat had been lost months ago when he was exploring the ice spikes of Frostia. He hadn't been wearing it on Ogigya, but the clothes Calypso held looked exactly like the clothes. "How?" he asked, amazed. Calypso set the clothes at his feet and backed away as if she were a dangerous beast. "I do have a little magic, you know. You keep burning through the clothes I give you, so I thought I would weave something less flammable." "These won't burn?" He picked up the leather pants, but they felt so smooth, unusual for normal leather skin pants. "They are completely fireproof," Calypso promised. "They'll stay clean and expand to fit you, should you ever become less scrawny." "Thanks." He meant to sound sarcastic, but he was honestly impressed. Benafour could make a lot of things, but an inflammable self-cleaning outfit wasn't one of them. "So, you made an exact replica of my favorite outfit. Did you, spy on me through a crystal ball months ago or something?" She frowned. "I don't know what that word means." "What word?" "Spying." Means you checked up on me without me knowing," he said. "Like you had an interest in me." She wrinkled her nose. "I have an interest in not making you a new set of clothes every other day. I have an interest in you not smelling so bad and walking around my island in smoldering rags." "Oh, yeah." Benafour grinned. "You're really warming up to me." Her face got even redder. "You're the most insufferable person I've ever met. I was only returning the favor. You fixed my fountain." That? Benafour laughed. The problem had been so simple he'd almost forgotten about it. One of the golden line heads had gotten turned sideways and the water pressure was off, so it started making an annoying ticking sound, jiggling up and down and spewing water over the rim of the pool. He pulled out a couple of tools and fixed it in about 2 minutes. That was no big deal. I don't like it when things don't work. And the curtains across the cave entrance? The rod wasn't level. And my gardening tools? Look, I just sharpened the shears. Cutting vines with a dull blade is dangerous. And the pruners needed to be oiled at the hinge and... Oh, yes, Calypso said in a pretty good imitation of his voice. You're really warming up to me. For once, Benafour was speechless. Calypso's eyes glittered. He knew she was making fun of him, but somehow it didn't feel mean. He pointed at his work table. What are you building? Oh, he looked at the bronze mirror, which he'd just finished wiring up to the Archimedes spear. In the screen's polished surface, his own reflection of white skin, shaggy long brown hair to his shoulders, and a 2-week small beard forming in surprised him. His hair had grown out longer and curly. His face was thinner and more chiseled, maybe because he hadn't been eating. His eyes were dark and a little ferocious when he wasn't smiling, kind of scary. He couldn't blame Calypso backing up from him. It's a seeing device, he said. I found one of these years ago when I was traveling through the Valewood forests. If I can make it work, it could send a distress signal to other airships. Calypso shook her head. That's impossible. This island is hidden, cut off from the world by strong magic. Time doesn't even flow the same here. Well, you gotta have some kind of outside contact. How'd you find out that I used to wear this trench coat? She twisted her hair as if the question made her uncomfortable. Seeing the past is simple magic. Seeing the present or the future, that is not. Yeah, well, Benafour said. Watch and learn, sunshine. I just connect these last 2 wires and the bronze plate sparked. Smoke billowed from the spear. A flash fire raced up Benafour's sleeve. He pulled off his shirt, threw it down, and stomped on it. He could tell Calypso was trying not to laugh, but she was shaking with the effort. Not a word. Benafour growled. She glanced at his chest to see it was streaked with old scars from weapon-making accidents. Nothing worth commenting on, she assured him. If you want that device to work, perhaps you should try a musical invocation. Right, he said. Whenever an engine malfunctions, I like to tap dance around it. Works every time. She took a deep breath and began to sing. Her voice hit him like a cool breeze. Like that first cold front in the lands of the violet ironwood valleys, when the summer heat finally breaks and you start to believe things might get better. Benafour couldn't understand the words, but the song was plaintive and bittersweet, as if she were describing a home she could never return to. Her singing was magic, no doubt, but it wasn't like trance-inducing voice or even charm speak. The music didn't want anything with him. It simply reminded him of his best memories. Building things with his mom when he was young, exploring untapped lands with his father, and sitting down in bars of a few brews with his lads. It made him miss home. Calypso stopped singing. Benafour realized he was staring like an idiot. Any luck? She asked. He forced his eyes back to the bronze mirror. Nothing. Wait. The bronze plate screamed. Suddenly, a white shimmering light shot out from the bronze plate into the sky, echoing a slight whisper. Nothing happened. Well, shit, he trailed off. Then suddenly a holographic image popped up in front of him and the girl. He saw his hometown on fire, the city of Failimour under flames. Enemy airships closed in on the town. Fireballs rained down towards the innocent civilians. The airships that were parked were falling from the sky. People screamed in fear. The whole city of Failimour was under siege. Benafour's heart dropped. The image faded. Benafour gazed at Calypso, who for once looked at him with pity and sorrow. Is that your home? She asked. Benafour gritted his teeth through tears. Yes. It must be our rivals from Oakton. They've always had a grudge against us. Calypso's eyes smoldered with anger, but not towards Benafour, but towards the enemies of Benafour. Your town looks like it needs you. Yeah. Benafour said through a roller coaster of emotions. Then we have some work to do, she said. We must get you back to Failimour City. Benafour thought he'd been busy before. When Calypso set her mind to something, she was a machine. Within a day, she'd gathered enough supplies for a week-long voyage. Food, flask of water, herbal medicines from her garden. She wove a sail big enough for a small boat, and made even enough rope for all the rigging. She got so much done that by the second day, she asked Benafour if he needed help with his own project. He looked up from the circuit board that was slowly coming together. If I didn't know any better, I think you're anxious to get rid of me. That's a bonus, she admitted. She was dressed for her work in a pair of blue silk and a white shirt. When he asked her about the wardrobe, she claimed she had realized how practical these clothes were after making some of Benafour. In the blue pants, she didn't look like a goddess. Her shirt was covered with grass and dirt stains, like she'd just run through an oil plant. Her feet were bare. Her cinnamon-colored hair was tied back, which made her almond eyes look even larger or more startling. Her hands were calloused like Benafour's and blistered from working with rope. Looking at her, Benafour felt a tugging in his stomach that he couldn't quite explain. So, she prompted. So what? She nodded at the circuitry. So, can I help? How's it coming? Oh, I'm good here, I guess. If I can wire this thing up to the boat, I should be able to navigate back home. Now all you need is a boat. He tried to read her expression. He wasn't sure if she was annoyed that he was still here, or wistful that she wasn't leaving too. Then he looked at all the supplies she stacked up easily enough for 2 people for several days. Would you, He hesitated. Would I what? Would you, want to try leaving the island? She scowled. What do you mean? Well, I'm not saying it would be fun having you along, always complaining and glaring at me and stuff, but I suppose I could stand for it, if you want to try it. Her expression softened a little. How noble, she muttered. But no, Benafour. If I tried to come with you, your tiny chance of escape would be no chance at all. The gods have placed ancient magic on this island to keep me here. A hero can leave. I cannot. The most important thing is getting you free so you can save your city. Not that I care what happens to you, she added quickly. Your city is at stake. Why do you care about my homeland? He asked. She arched her eyebrows, as if surprised that he'd asked a sensible question. It reminds me of when I once had a home to go back to. Knowing your city, your land is at siege, making me care about my home and cherish it for as long as I can. You never know when you will lose everything you have so quickly. She pierced out. Benafour stood there amazed at the answer that she had actually cared about something. His mouth was hanging open. She reached out and closed his mouth. Now, how can I help? He stared down at his project, but when he spoke, he blurted out, and an idea had been forming ever since Calypso made his new clothes. You know that flameproof cloth? You think you could make a little bag of that fabric? He described the dimensions. Calypso waved her hand impatiently. That will only take a few minutes. Will it help your journey? Yes, it might save my life. And, could you chip off a little piece of your crystal from your cave? I don't need much. She frowned. That's an odd request. Humor me. Alright, consider it done. I'll make the fireproof pouch tonight at the loom when I've cleaned up. But what can I do now, while my hands are dirty? She held up her callous, grimy fingers. Benafour couldn't help thinking there was nothing harder than a girl getting her hands dirty, if you know what I mean, Benafour thought to himself. Then he mentally slapped himself in the face for thinking that. But of course, that was just a general comment. Didn't apply to Calypso. Well, he said, you could twist some more bronze coils, but that's kind of specialized. She pushed in next to him on the bench and began to work, her hands braiding the bronze wire faster than he could have. Just like weaving, she said. This isn't so hard. Huh, Benafour said. Well, if you ever get off this island and want a job, let me know. You're not a total klutz. She smirked. A job, eh? Making things in your forge? Nope, we can start our own shop, Benafour said, surprising himself. Starting a machine shop was one of his biggest dreams. Benafour and Calypso's blacksmith shop. Magical machines and invisible tools. Fresh fruits and vegetables? Calypso offered. Cider and stew, Benafour added. We could provide entertainment. You could sing and I could, randomly juggle screws or something. Calypso laughed, a clear, happy sound that made Benafour's heart go ka-thump. See, he said, I'm funny. He managed to kill her smile. You are not funny. Now get back to work and no cider and stew, she said jokingly. Yes, ma'am, Benafour smiled. They worked in silence, side by side, for the rest of the afternoon. 2 nights later, the guidance console was finished. Benafour and Calypso sat on the beach near the spot where Benafour had destroyed the dining table and they ate a picnic dinner together. The full moon turned the waves to silver. Calypso wore a fresh white shirt and her blue pants, which she'd apparently decided to live in. Behind them in the dunes, the supplies were carefully packed and ready to go. All we need is a boat, Calypso said. Benafour nodded. He tried not to linger on the word we. Calypso made it clear she wasn't going. I can start chopping wood into boards tomorrow, Benafour said. A few days, we'll have enough for a small boat. You made a ship before. Your airship, Calypso said, meaning the crashed one under the waters. Oh, no. I bought that one back in Failimour City. She was called the Red Lady.
The reason I called her the Red Lady was because she had golden red streaks down her side and beautiful white sails. Quite the craftsmanship.
So, how long until you sail? Asked Calypso. Her tone was light, and she wasn't meeting his eyes. I'm not sure. Another week? For some reason, saying that made Benafour feel less agitated. When he had gotten here, he couldn't wait to leave. Now he was glad he had a few more days. Odd. Calypso ran her fingers across the completed circuit board. This took so long to make. Can't rush perfection. A smile tugged at the edge of her mouth. Yes, but will it work? Getting out? No problem, Benafour said. But when I get back, I'm going to save the city, get an airship, and come back for you. What? Calypso blinked. Benafour grinned nervously. To get back here. I'm sure I must have mentioned that sometime, knowing full well he never mentioned that. You most definitely did not. Am I going to leave you here? After you help me and everything? Of course I'm coming back. Once I get a new ship with a better guidance system, he said. You can't come back, Calypso said. Benafour's heart went clunk. Because I'm not welcome? Because you can't. It's impossible. No man fights Ogigya twice. That is the rule. Benafour rolled his eyes. Yeah, well, you might notice that I don't follow the rules. I'm coming back here with my new ship and we'll spring you. Take you wherever you want to go. It's only fair. Fair. Calypso's voice was barely audible. In the firelight, her eyes looked so sad. Benafour couldn't stand it. Did she think he was lying to her just to make her feel better? He considered it a given that he would come back and free her from the island. How could he not? You didn't really think I could start Benafour and Calypso's blacksmith shop, magical machines and invisible tools without you, did you? He asked. I can't make cider and stew, and I sure can't sing. She stared at the sand. Well, anyway, Benafour said, tomorrow I'll start on the lumber, and in a few days... He looked out over the water. Something was bobbing in the waves. Benafour watched in disbelief as a large wooden raft floated in on the tide and slid to a stop on the beach. Benafour was too dazed to move, but Calypso sprang to her feet. Hurry! She sprinted across the beach, grabbed some supply bags, and ran them to the raft. I don't know how long it will stay! But... Benafour stood. His legs felt like they had turned to rock. He had just convinced himself he had another week. Now he didn't even have time to finish dinner. That's the magic raft? Duh! Calypso yelled. It might work like it's supposed to, and take you where you want to go. But we can't be sure. The island's magic is obviously unstable. You must rig up the guidance... You must rig up your guidance device to navigate. She snatched up the console and ran toward the raft, which got Benafour moving. He helped her fasten it to the raft and run the wires to the small rudder in the back. The raft was already fitted with a mast, so Benafour and Calypso hauled their sail aboard and started on the rigging. They worked side by side in perfect harmony. Even among the other blacksmith workers he'd worked with in the past, he's never found a girl that worked so hard as her. It was amazing. In no time, they had the sail in place and all the supplies aboard. Benafour hit the buttons on the Archimedes spear and muttered a prayer to the heavens for safe travel. The celestial bronze console hummed to life. The rigging tightened. The sail turned. The raft began scraping against the sand, straining to reach the waves. "Go," Calypso said. Benafour turned. She was so beautiful he couldn't stand it. She smelled of cinnamon and wood smoke, and the thought he'd never smell anything that good again killed him. The raft finally got here, he said. Calypso snorted. Her eyes might have been red, but it was hard to tell in the moonlight. "You just noticed? But if it only shows up for guys you like..." "Don't push your luck, Benafour Stormgate," she said. "I still hate you." "Okay. And you are not coming back here," she insisted. "So don't give me any empty promises." "How about a full promise?" he said. "Because I'm definitely..." She grabbed his face and pulled him in for a kiss. For all his joking and flirting, Benafour had never kissed a girl before. This wasn't a small peck, it was a full, real contact kiss. If Benafour had gears and wires in his brain, they would have short-circuited. Calypso pushed him away. "That didn't happen." "Okay." His voice sounded an octave higher pitched than normal. "Get out of here." "Okay." She turned, wiping her eyes furiously, and stormed up the beach, the breeze tousling her hair. Benafour wanted to call after her, but the sail caught the full force of the wind, and the raft cleared the beach. He struggled to align the guidance console. By the time Benafour looked back at the island of Ogigya, it was a dark line in the distance, their campfire pulsing like a tiny orange heart. His lips still tingled from the kiss. "That didn't happen," he told himself. "I can't be in love with an immoral girl. She definitely can't be in love with me. Not possible." As his raft skimmed over the water, he thought about something his father had told him years ago before his death. It was a line from the story of Calypso. His father would always tell him at the end. An oath to keep with a final breath. He understood now what his father meant. Oaths were dangerous, but Benafour didn't care. He gazed back at the horizon line to see the island gone. "I'm coming back for you, Calypso," he said to the night wind. "I swear it." He turned to the console and closed his eyes. He thought of Failimour City, drenched in flames. Pain shot through his heart knowing the city gone. He just had this sinking feeling. He needed a new airship. He knew of another place that sold more advanced airships than Failimour ever did. "Take me to Aurora," he muttered to himself. He heard the whispering of wind and opened his eyes to find himself in a bustling town of Aurora, gazing towards a brand new golden airship. Over the next 3 years, Benafour Stormgate worked vigorously to earn the money for that airship by working as a farmer in the wheat fields, picking berries for stands, running a tavern, and helping out in the forges and mining coal and diamonds and emeralds in the mines. That entire time span, he had his mind set on one thing, Calypso. He was not going to break his promise. Within 3 years, he earned the money and purchased the airship. A new golden ship with blue streaks running down the sides and black sails. Once he purchased the airship, he didn't even grab supplies. He set the ship off for Ogigya. After the span of 2 months, he came to the vast blue ocean. Once the airship floated over the ocean, he pulled something shiny out of his pocket. It was the blue crystal Calypso had given him. He kissed it and softly closed his eyes. He had kept it all those years. He heard a loud bang sound shoot through the world. He slowly opened his eyes to see his new airship sailing downward slowly to Ogigya. He smiled the widest grin a man could ever grin. Tears streamed down his face from pure joy. He lifted his hands to the air and screamed, "Woohoo!" Calypso heard the scream echo down to the beach and sprinted out from her garden to the beachfront. She speared up to see a giant airship sailing towards her. Tears streamed down her face, knowing it was Benafour. The ship crashed into the ocean, creating a spray of white water, but this time it didn't crash and sink. Benafour jumped down from the steering wheel and ran down from the front deck. He vaulted over the rail of the ship and plopped into the ocean water, standing and running to the shore. He saw Calypso in her white dress, hair blowing in the wind, actually smiling through tears. When he got close, he could smell that cinnamon that he missed. "See? I told you I'd come back for you," Benafour grinned. Calypso wiped her tears away. "You are 3 years and 2 months late," she said. Well, sunshine, I had to work my ass off to get this new ship. Isn't she a beaut? Calypso didn't care. She just cared about Benafour standing before her. How did you find Ogigya? She cried in shock. Benafour pulled out the crystal. With this, and tossed it to her. Calypso caught it and smiled. She gave Benafour a tight hug, and she kissed him for a few minutes. Benafour pointed to his airship, letting her know it was time to go. Calypso took one last look at the island, happy to be leaving. It had been her home for centuries, thousands of years, and it finally took a burden off her shoulders. They both climbed up onto the airship. Benafour ran to the steering wheel and flipped on the engine. He pushed a bunch of random buttons, and the ship's black sails pulled out into the wind. The airship roared to life and floated up into the air out of the water. Steam bellowed from the back hot forges, creating a white cloud of smoke. Benafour put on a silly captain's hat that made Calypso laugh. Where would you like to go, my good lady? Anywhere you want, Benafour smiled. Calypso thought for a minute. She walked up to the steering wheel and hugged him tight, wrapping her arms around his waist and leaning her chin on his shoulder, resting the edge of her head against his cheek. As long as I'm with you, I'm happy enough. Benafour smiled and drove the ship higher into the air, ready for a new adventure that awaited them.